Hello out there in YouTube land.
Welcome back.
Today we're going to talk about a movie that's not exactly scary, but happens to be one of Tabby and my favorite films.
It's one of our feel-good, go-tos.
And we're kind of getting in this mood for kind of a Halloween and summer type vibe.
Already.
Yeah, so we figured this would be the perfect film to talk about. Bleh.
Because along with The Worst Witch, this is kind of what we go with, kind of starting early October.
So this
Even
is
though it's May.
The Monster Squad. First of all, how can you not love a film that is one of the it goes on the classic trope of combining all the monster movies into one movie.
And the monsters are recognized by the kids as somewhat good.
And the adults, of course, are all, except for one adult, are all like, oh, monsters don't exist until they start causing havoc, of course.
Yeah.
But this movie in particular does a really good job at showing, what more modern kids would do if encountering with monsters. And granted, this movie takes place in the 80s. However, a lot of it is still conducive to today.
It is, and I think if I'd ever had a child, they would probably have reacted very, very similar
by
to these
far.
kids.
Because... And the thing that I also liked about this film is that it really plays on the basic tropes of each individual character.
It does.
The Wolfman is cursed. When he's in human form, he's a nice guy. When he's in wolf form, he's not.
He's a little grouchy.
Dracula is portrayed as always evil.
Mm-hmm.
Frankenstein's monster is actually not evil at all. He just has these things happen and it sucks.
He kind of has our luck.
He does, actually.
I can totally empathize with Frankenstein's monster.
Oh, totally. It's so funny. And then, added to that, you have a whole group of completely desensitized children.
Yeah. At least in terms of the monsters.
Yeah, I mean, Tabby and I totally would have been in this band of kids.
We would have been, except we would have been chasing Dracula around for his autograph.
Yeah, there's the difference. And he probably would have been like, what?
We would have disturbed the poor vampire.
Probably so. And then he'd probably be trying to decide if he wants to eat us.
Or keep us around for entertainment purposes.
So, and then of course we'd be like, oh, you have bats. And he'd be like, huh?
This is how Dani and I grew up.
Yes.
What do you mean vampires are scary?
Yes, because they're wonderful. They're amazing creatures. They're interesting. They're entertaining. They're scary to other people, but we find they're going, ha-ha, scary. And, it's entertaining.
They turn into animals.
Yes. Who wouldn't want to have the ability to just shift forms on command?
Exactly.
I mean,
And this is why we would have been part of this crew.
Yes!
In Monster Squad.
Oh my god. The only difference is that the, leader kid would not be the leader because Tabby and I would have taken it over.
Yeah, we were kind of like that. It's leading or nothing. So.
It's not to say that, we won't, follow someone else's lead, but we tend to, if it's something that we know a great deal about, we just kind of take over.
Yeah. It's a flaw and a good thing.
Yeah,
it's a double-edged sword.
We take over with good intentions and and most of the time not actually meaning to take over. That's the funny part. Thing. It's not that we set out to take over something. It's that we know a lot about something, so we try to join into this something, and then we provide all this information, and then gradually stuff just keeps getting handed to it until we're the ones leading whatever it is.
Until it's. Hey, here's all this stuff. Go do it.
Yeah. We're okay. So, if you've never seen this film, it's basically the story of these kids living in a small American town. And, you know, they're actually in the suburbs, so they're not, like, that far from, like, the big city. I believe it's supposed to be, like, the LA area, so they're in a smaller area near LA, but they're not in LA proper. So, you know, there's things
it's like the suburbs from E.T.
Yeah.
You know?
So, you know, it's you know, lots of housing developments, etc., etc., etc. And the kids kind of have all banded together because of their mutual love of monsters. And of course you have kind of the bad boy who is played by Ryan Lambert, who was known for being in Kids Incorporated on the Disney Channel at the time. And it was so funny that he's a bad boy riding a bicycle. It's so funny.
That's actually a talent right there. Pull that role off.
You almost want to shake that man's hand from like, you pulled that off. I don't know how.
I thought, you know, the makeup, the effects, they were all very, very good.
They were.
You know, the 80s really had a boom with that.
They did, and the other thing
and they have a nostalgia for us, but...
They do, but, you know, the other thing that you can say about the 80s is that not only did they have really masterful makeup artists, but they also had writers who understood the importance of comedy and how to pull the comedy off to where it wasn't, like, you know, mean toward anyone in particular. It was just funny. Like, you know, this movie is known for the fact that, like, the kids run around and be like, Wolfman's got nards! I mean, how can you not laugh at that?
Exactly, I'm laughing now.
Exactly. You know, it's just hilarious. And
which, kudos to the producers and the directors for that.
Yes.
Because to date, Wolfman's usually neutered.
He is! If you start paying attention, like, even the Underworld series, there's nothing between those legs.
And there's nothing on top if they're a female whale.
Yeah, exactly. So
good on you for anatomical reality.
Anatomically correct werewolves.
Yeah.
That's kind of fun. We should totally do a whole series on anatomically correct monsters. That would be kind of entertaining.
It would be, because I don't think about these things.
People are probably going to be very frightened by this idea.
Well,
but that's where our brains
go. Think about it. Think long and hard about some of your favorite movies and your favorite books. Think about that.
Mm-hmm.
We'll get into that.
We will. So, the other thing that is like a big thing with me in this movie that I've had a lot of people guffaw over, we'll put it that way, is that I can never get through this film without bawling.
Yeah.
And that's because of Frankenstein. Because Frankenstein befriends this little girl, much like he did in the original film. The difference is, in the original film with Boris Karloff, you know, it was just an accident that he killed her and whatever. In this movie, he ends up not hurting the little girl. He just befriends her and they play and all this stuff. Mm-hmm. And it sucked that he ended up having to go away in this vortex because he was created by evil, but it wasn't his fault and he didn't actually do anything that was evil.
Yeah.
And so it always breaks my heart that Frankenstein has to go away. And here I am already like getting like misty because there we go, Frankenstein again. So if you really wanted to know, Dani is an old softie.
But it does bring up a very good point.
It does.
It brings up, you know, Frankenstein in and of himself was not evil.
No. And even when you go back to the original novel by Mary Shelley, Frankenstein isn't even evil in that. He's trying to understand his condition. He's trying to figure out a way to live and exist. And because of people's fear of the unknown, he has no way to live.
Exactly.
And so it ultimately is really a treatise on like how society treats people that are different. And so Mary Shelley was really masterful in creating this sci-fi masterpiece, yet having like social commentary interwoven within it. And it not like browbeating you over head with a sledgehammer that it was social commentary, just that she had this amazing story and this amazing imagination and compiled all these things into this entire universe.
She did. And if you really think about it, Dracula was the only one that really chose to be a monster.
Yeah.
Wolfman did not.
No, he was cursed. I mean,
he was cursed.
He didn't do anything wrong. Frankenstein didn't do anything wrong.
Frankenstein woke up on a
slab.
On a lab slab, and
I mean, I'm sure there's part of his brain that's like, what the fuck?
Yeah, really. I know where my brain would be like, what the hell?
And then, you know, when they introduced the wife, I mean, I feel for her. God help me.
Yeah.
And then, like, the mummy. The mummy didn't choose to be reanimated.
Right. That was all
the
magic.
Priests and stuff doing magic and things. So you really start thinking about all these monsters, and it gets into
different light.
Yeah.
I mean, very different light.
And it's kind of cool that specifically what was, you know, essentially a kids' movie brings about all these thoughts.
And if you follow with some versions of Dracula, his choice was out of grief.
Yeah. If you go back to the original novel, the novel has none of that, though.
Yeah.
Dracula is just a evil, masterful vampire. And that's it. His, you know, desire is blood and property and greed. That's it.
Yeah.
There's no, you know, big long love story. There's no reincarnation.
Massive battle.
No.
Things like that. In its very origin, he was evil.
And if you actually look at the source material that Bram Stoker used and some of the early versions, because Dracula was originally actually called the Undead, not Dracula. It wasn't until Bram Stoker stumbled across a little bit of a snippet of information about Vlad the Impaler that he decided, oh, I'll just use this historical figure to provide a background and use that name because it's cool and make that into Dracula. Because most of the book was actually already written before he added those things. So it was just flat out this vampire who is evil that is attacking London, essentially. When in, you know, reality, the character himself has very little connection to Vlad the Impaler. So that's kind of interesting once you get into that part of it.
But I mean, you know, thinking about Monster Squad, thinking about Frankenstein, it does still bring up that fact that what is your definition of evil?
Yeah.
And what was the true monster?
Exactly. And the other thing I have to talk about is the old man.
Yeah.
I forget what they called him in the movie. There was some sort of name they had for him. But he was a Holocaust survivor, and he would talk about knowing about monsters. But of course, his monsters were not these supernatural things. They were human monsters. But he was the only adult that believed these kids that something was going on, and then he got to see Frankenstein, and about flipped his shit. That poor man. But he was so cool that he, you know, jumped in there and helped these kids try to combat this evil attacking this town, and was successful. Yeah. And so it was just, like, there's so much in this little tiny, you know, kids movie that is positive and amazing and cool.
So much more than what you would, it's more themed towards society and adults.
Yes, it is.
You know, when you do kind of a deeper analysis of it. So.
It really is. And so if you have not seen The Monster Squad, definitely you've got to watch it.
It's fun.
If you have, comment down below with what your favorite part of the movie is, because I'm sure you've got one. So, until next time.
Bye.